So Maneesha, take me back to the middle of 2020. What were the series of moments that led to your trigger to start this journey with us at RNT?
Yeah, I think it really actually went back, probably back to 2017. I was diagnosed with infertility. And when I was diagnosed with infertility, the doctor gave me a lot of other diagnoses having to do with my health. And one of them that totally caught me by surprise was being overweight by BMI. I really hadn't noticed, and I had no issues with the way I looked. I really hadn't even realized that I had been overweight. And then I was also diagnosed with prediabetes, insulin resistance, vitamin D deficiency, hypertension, PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome. I was shocked. And so between 2017 and when I started RNT in 2020, I had sort of been on my own health journey, but it was a really slow and steady health journey where I just changed the way I ate, sort of reduced some of the stressors in life as much as I could by reducing my work hours as a physician. Trying to find a little bit more joy, like spending more time with friends and family, and really getting into tennis. And also I was getting coached, mindset coaching for weight loss and for weight management. So there was a lot going on that I was trying on my own over like three and a half years before I came across RNT. And that's really where, once I saw I had made progress on my own, but I had kind of plateaued in terms of weight, while still having a lot of the stress of infertility and trying to conceive. That's when RNT came around, and I decided to take the plunge and really kind of push forward on those last few pounds and really try and understand kind of body composition and how to push through where I had gotten to myself, but then I wanted to get further. Thinking that, ultimate health would help with fertility and trying to get pregnant, actually.
Did you have a specific moment like in 2020, or was it just a case of I want to just go to the next level now?
I was already contemplating some program that would help push me, and there was a post on Facebook from a friend's brother who had already done RNT, and it was, I think his picture was used as testimony on Facebook. And so when I saw that, I was like, this is the push I want. And there wasn't any sort of one moment. It was just a culmination of years of trying on my own and wanting guidance to push me further.
And if we take it back to before 2017, what was going on that led you to gain the weight that you had and lead to some of these health problems that you were experiencing?
Yeah, that's the easy one. Now looking back, it's super easy to define that. I mean, I met my husband in 2011. By 2013, we were married. And by 2014, we had come up on our biggest and first hurdle in our relationship, which was he wanted kids and I didn't. So 2013 to 2017, we were in that space, going back and forth, marriage counseling, talking, marriage counseling, fighting, separating. There were so many things going on in that 4-year period that we couldn't reconcile. And I think I probably coped with food a lot for those emotions. I mean, this was somebody I was, my soulmate, and I wanted so much for this relationship to work, and I couldn't figure it out because we had this one thing that we didn't share. And although we had decided ahead of time before we decided to get married that we both were okay with not having kids, then once he changed his mind in 2014, I couldn't find a way to make it work. And so I think I just turned towards food, and that's what led to more stress, more food, more stress, more food. Work was also very stressful. I'm an infectious disease physician, and the job I had been in from 2015 onwards was also extremely stressful. And the boss I had was extremely stressful as well. So I think it was a culmination of many things.
You said that it's easy to define now, but why is that the case? And what was it in the moment? Did you have any idea what was going on, or did you notice yourself gaining weight?
Yeah. Right. No, I don't think so. I don't think I just don't think I had the awareness. I think I just was coping with food without thinking about it. And it seemed like a normal thing to do. Maybe a lot of physicians around me were coping with their stress with food. And I had a stressful marriage. So I thought, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. I I can cope however I can feel better in the moment. And that's, I think, where food came in. And I never knew I had a problem with food anyways, so it didn't seem like it was a problem. It's just something I did. And I never even noticed that the food, was causing weight gain. I just never noticed. I don't know why. I'm sure I had to buy new clothes at some point, but I don't remember it.
It just creeps up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you feel at that point where, there's probably two timelines. There's the 2017 timeline and then there's the 2020. How did you feel inside? When you looked at yourself in the mirror, when you just overall carried yourself in your day-to-day work, life, socials, etc.?
I felt good, honestly. I felt good, other than knowing that I was in a stressful relationship because of the fertility. Well, because of the difference between wanting kids or not wanting kids. I felt really good. I have great friends. I have a great support system. I had a good job, good income, good family support, and just activities to fill my time. I really didn't have a problem until I went to the doctor, and it was like one day, and it was 6 or 7 diagnoses based on sort of behavioral issues, right? Because I'm eating in a certain way, I now have almost 4 or 5 diagnoses based on that. Or because I have stress levels from all the things that were happening in life, those are also causing some of these diagnoses. And I was like, oh my goodness, I have things I need to take care of. So that was the turning point. It was in 2017 when the doctor said, you have all these things. And I sort of took it more personally at that point, oh, it's something I've been doing, and kind of opened my eyes all on one day.
Yeah. So when you started the process in September 2020, you were someone that dove right into it. Talk us about starting the process and what it felt like to have the structure, to have the education, to get to that next level. What was the starting blocks like for you?
Like you said, when you answer the initial questionnaire, I remember scoring so high on sort of the commitment level.
Yeah.
Because I knew that the last 3.5 years I had done so much, and I was just going to be building on that, and I was ready to really get into it. So I found that, that commitment was really there. And in fact, that first few weeks of waiting to actually start, I was getting very antsy, let's start. And mentally, I was really strong going in. I remember having to look around me and realize, okay, I'm not only starting RNT, but I'm also starting several other things at the same time. And that was my choice, right? So I was trying to conceive, and there were miscarriages that had just happened. And there was a couple of miscarriages that happened during it, right at the beginning. I was starting a business of life coaching. I was attending the second part of my coaching certification program. I was starting tennis teams. I was starting and finishing a book, like a chapter in a book. So I was a published author for the first time. And then all these new habits that we were setting in place with RNT. So it was a lot at the same time, at the exact same time. I literally started all of this around the same time. And I remember going back and forth between really pressuring myself to keep going, and then also giving myself grace when I wasn't able to do certain parts, or when my time or when I couldn't get to the goals as quickly as I thought I was going to, when I couldn't set habits in place as quickly as I thought I was going to. I kept going back and forth, I should push myself, or I should just let off the brakes and give myself some grace. And I remember talking with my first coaches with RNT, and it was the same thing. They were trying to be understanding and then also trying to push. So that was really the challenge in the beginning, is where do you push and where do you kind of let off?
Yeah. And where did you find that? What, because you're starting 5 different things, which are all massive goals in itself. How did that all go? Because knowing what you've achieved so far, you pretty much accomplished all of them, with regards to tennis, to authorship. So how do you manage it all?
No, it was actually, it never really went one way or the other. It was always back and forth. If I gave myself grace, then I was like, oh, I'm giving myself too much grace, let's put pressure. If I put myself in too much pressure, then I would say, oh, I need more grace. And it was kind of always going back and forth. I never found myself kind of coasting. I always found myself thinking about, which way do I need to be pushing? Do I need to push? Do I need to give grace? And so even now, this is where I find myself, and I guess that's just the norm right now. Yeah.
So talk about the first sort of 6 to 9 months. What was some of the mental and emotional challenges that you're facing? What were some of the easy things that you found? And just how did you find the journey of getting to that next level of your body and your physique and everything that comes with it?
I know that when I started, I think I thought it was going to be easier to set some of the habits into place. And I was quickly seeing, especially in the first 3 months, that all this habit building is not as easy as I thought it was going to be. Just simple things, drinking water, steps, tracking food. Also, I remember thinking it's going to be easier because my husband and I are doing it together. So my husband started RNT with me at the same time. So I remember thinking, oh, we'll just do everything together. It'll be easy. But it quickly became clear that he had his own preferences in terms of food, in terms of when he wanted to exercise, when he could take his steps. And I realized I was going to be doing a lot of it on my own. So that adjustment period, I think the first 3 months was kind of a reality check. This is something that's going to take, it's going to take some mental effort. It's going to take some awareness. It's going to take, it's just not going to be in place without really being intentional about it. And I think that took me like 3 months to realize, and maybe just because I was going through so many other things at the same time, I wasn't fully committed the way I thought I was when I filled out the questionnaire. Once those things were put into place, I found myself in a stride. Like I had hit a stride where the gym routine, actually remembering what it felt like to actually just really execute on the exercises at the gym, it felt familiar and it felt like something I wanted to do. And that was a shift. I remember having that shift, realizing, oh, being in the gym was something I wanted to do. Taking a walk was something I wanted to do. Drinking the water was something I wanted to do. It was becoming a lot more second nature. But go ahead.
No, I was going to say, what was the flip? You said it took 3 months. What was the realization?
No, I don't think there was a flip. It was more just building slowly. Okay. I think it was a slow build and just back and forth with the coach and reinforcing the same desires. Like, what is your true desire? Why are you doing this? And reaching back into that and knowing that in order to try to get pregnant, I want to be as healthy as possible. I also want to be an example of what's possible by trying to do all these things at the same time. Can I do it? Just like kind of going back to that over and over, and then developing maybe a little bit more of a habit, developing a little bit more of a different habit, and just seeing the gradual implementation, I think, was what got me through. It wasn't a one turning point.
Yeah. And when you hit your stride, how did that feel? And how did that?
Really good. I remember thinking like, oh, I have that gym euphoria that I had felt many years ago when I was a gym goer. Like, it was just like, oh, going to the gym and doing the exercises and feeling what it feels like to actually be in the moment of doing that rep. I remember having those feelings of euphoria, like, oh, this feels really good. This is so good for my body. I want to make sure I take care of my body the rest of the day. Make sure I want to do all the other parts of it. When I can get this from the gym, I want to get everything else from all the other parts as well. The food, the water, the sleep. Yeah, all of it. It felt like a flow, like something that you wanted to do more of. And then the more you did it, the more you wanted to do it. And it was just like this ongoing flow. Yeah.
And what were you learning about yourself?
That the same old battles were still there in the mind, right? Like,
yeah,
there's parts of you that strengthen, but there's the old parts that never really fall away. The tendency to want to cope with challenges with food. The thing I wasn't aware of before 2017, I was so much more aware of. Like, the awareness is, I think, what really came to the surface. Okay, this is how I cope. This is how I choose to cope. Even when I know that there's other ways to cope, this is how I choose to cope. Food. You know, food was my comfort, definitely. It just became much more apparent. So having the awareness of it definitely allowed me to let it just be without having to follow through on it, without having to use food as a comfort. But other times I was aware of it and I was still using food as comfort. And that was a lot of the discussion in my check-ins with the coaches.
Yeah.
Why are you still doing that? And I just think I couldn't figure out, am I using everything else going on in life, especially the miscarriages and the infertility? Was I using that as an excuse that it's okay for me to cope sometimes? Almost getting mad at the coaches, like, hey, I get to use food, you know, to cope. It's a really rough time. And almost thinking like, maybe this isn't the right program because maybe people are not going to understand what I need right now. But at the same time, realizing the coaches were amazing, especially I remember Ryan and I had such a good coaching relationship. He really was very empathetic and understanding, and knew that he needed to maybe even back off a little bit because things were so rough. You know, like having to go under general anesthesia to remove a non-viable pregnancy during the last month or so before the checkpoint, like that was just like a lot. Without even me realizing how much it was, I think he was starting to see like maybe this is a time to just sort of let a little bit more time pass before getting to checkpoint, before pushing. Because going through a grind while going through that was kind of probably too much.
Yeah. Yeah, this is another thing, right?
It's just a whole nother thing.
So how's your relationship with food? Because you've written about it a lot in the group, you know, in the Facebook group, you'd write about the some of the challenges around dealing with the muck or dealing with the old identity shifts. And this is something that's, you know, it's a very common challenge, and it's probably the ultimate challenge, right? It's the battle with the mind.
Yes.
What are some of the lessons you can take away and some of the things that you're doing that's better, or advice you can give for people in that similar sort of scenario where for so many years it's just become a normal ingrained behavior to do these things, but unless you deprive those external crutches, you never actually realize it, how default that behavior is.
Yeah. I think what I see now is that there's the habit to cope with food is always going to be there, and then removing that to be able to face the emotions that are leading to that coping mechanism, having to be with those emotions is one of the scariest things. And so the fear of knowing that I'm feeling sad, or that I'm feeling lonely, or that I'm feeling less than when I can't get pregnant, like those are the things that are hard to face. And having the courage, I think, to be with those feelings, to sit with them, to not cope with food or any other external coping mechanism. Like right now I cope with tennis. When I feel something and I don't want to feel it, I just like, okay, let me go play tennis, which is great, but it's also a way to cope, and it's not really sitting with the emotions. So I know that there's fear still of feeling less than, of knowing that I want to do more in terms of my physical, and not wanting to push through those emotions, not wanting to see those emotions for what they are, not wanting to get clear on why am I feeling them. There's still a resistance there. And that's just kind of what I've learned. And I think for me, having the awareness, knowing that I have those fears is where I am in the journey. I don't know that I've necessarily found the best way to be with the feelings and to deal with the fear. I think I'm just learning that these are my fears, these are my feelings, these are the thoughts that I have that create these feelings. I don't know that I'm necessarily at the point that I've learned what I can do in those moments, other than just sit with them, which seems just so scary. I'm almost unwilling to do it most of the time.
Why?
Yeah, I guess not having the habit of doing it, not knowing what will happen if I'm actually able to sit with those those emotions. It's fear of having fear. It's really fear of facing fear. Fear of facing inadequacy, fear of facing my true emotions. But I think I'll get there. I'm just not there yet. And I think there's so much that's happened in the last year or so. I think I'm okay with just being here right now, and I will get there.
Yeah.
I have that sense that I'm going to figure this out. But I also know that what I've been through in the last year has been tremendous, and just miscarriages and trying to conceive alone, you know, I just don't think I have the capacity to move forward in these other parts, facing the fear without coping with food.
My question or comment would be, having seen your progress in the last year, even when going through these very difficult periods, your body weight, which is a great sort of scoreboard, so to speak, has remained pretty steady around your check point weight, which to me would signal an actual actionable shift in the way in your relationship with food.
Yes, and I
Does that
think
make sense? Yeah.
No, for sure. My relationship with food is definitely changed. And I think what I'm highlighting here is that when it gets really hard, I still turn to food, but it's not as frequent. It's not as much. I can catch myself more quickly. I can shift to slightly better choices, even if I am coping with food. So yeah, for sure, there's been a big shift, and I've maintained the weight that I had at checkpoint, maybe slightly higher, but not that much higher. And I think this is my sort of homeostasis in terms of where I am in my body weight. There's just moments, right, when things
that's
are
something
tough.
to that's not something to sort of underplay though, because if you think about it being the ultimate scorecard of like what you put in your body, how you move your body, etc., that signals, okay, even if I do have moments, those moments aren't raiding the whole biscuit cupboard. It might just be one, right? And like you said, it's that journey. And I think it's why this is important to mention is because you're not going to go from that extreme to the other extreme. You're going to move through that phase. And if you are in a position where you're having those moments, but they're just not as frequent, they're not as bad, and your body weight is staying stable, I think it's tremendous progress in your behavior, your mindset, your identity, your relationship overall with yourself, because you're proving to yourself that you probably are dealing with it a lot better than you think you are.
It's so easy to be self-critical and realize that here are the parts that still need improvement.
I mean, no one's going to be perfect, right? It's just that's what it's a journey to self-mastery. It's like you're moving towards that.
Yeah.
But when I'm listening to it, I'm like, yeah, you're saying all these things, but at the same time, you've actually maintained your body weight. And if you said to me, if you were like 10 kilos up, I'd be like, okay, well, that's a different conversation. But it's not. Like you've exhibited good behaviors, and you've shown yourself. And you should commend yourself for that, and pat yourself on the shoulder there.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that when we were speaking during like some of the most difficult times you've had in the last couple of months, I said, you did say, all being said, I'm still there or thereabouts. So I'm taking that as a win. And I was like, of course, that is a win.
It is. You're right. And thank you for the reminder. I know it's good to be reminded. Yeah.
So talk about the grind phase then. So when you dropped, body weight hit to a checkpoint, you did a photo shoot, and you're very vocal about your grind experience in the Facebook group, documenting some of the changes you're going through. This is obviously the period where there's no external, those external crutches have to be away, otherwise you're not going to hit the goal. Talk about that experience when you did push it. You mentioned earlier that you had a period where you backed off and delayed the checkpoint. But when we did pull the pin, how was that experience?
Oh, it was hard. It was really difficult because you can see the goal is so close. You have the photo shoot booked. It's you see that your body has changed so much, and there's just a little bit more to go. And at that point, it was mostly based on how are you maintaining your habits? How are you pushing at the gym? What is your weight at this moment? How many calories are you taking in? It's all really well defined what is supposed to be happening at that moment, right? And in those last few weeks before the checkpoint. And it's just that push and pull. It was like very, very clear that I had made so much progress, and very, very clear what points still needed work. And it was, again, just, I think the battle that I discussed before, the grace and the and the pressure, it just became heightened. And I think I just pushed into the pressure part a little bit more. Really had to use more willpower in those weeks, where I know that willpower is not sustainable. The use of willpower to get to goals is not sustainable, but I did have to will myself into, no, I'm gonna maintain this number of calories for the day. I'm gonna count everything. I'm gonna drink all the water. I'm gonna take all the steps. I'm gonna get to the gym. And yeah, I think it was a matter of willpower. I think it was a matter of extra pushing, just digging deep. I don't know exactly how to define that, but it's like in those moments where almost like as if you're walking towards the food and watching yourself walk towards the food and even picking it up in your hand and just saying, no, I'm going to put this down. You know, let me not undo the things that I've put into place and let me get where I'm going. Let me get to that point. It was important. It really helped bring up all the muck, but also face it much more intensely. You know?
And how was the moment where you got into the shape of your life? You did your photo shoot. How was that? I mean, you had some really cool pictures, which if anyone wants to see, they can check it out in the case study in the show notes. But there's some really cool, like I like the crossword picture. You got into really good shape. They describe that experience and you know why it was beneficial to have that date there.
The date is what created the extra push. The date was exactly what I needed to have that talk with myself. Like, this is it, right? This is the point where let's see what you've got. You want to be an example. Well, try being an example to yourself right here. This is it, you know? This is the moment where you say, oh, I'll do it. But this is where you're going to do it. Are you going to do it now, or it's either now or never? The date really helped, I think. That create that extra push. It was really tough. And then getting to it, when I saw what I was looking like in the photographer's camera, I didn't recognize myself. I didn't recognize how I had gotten here. Like, it just sort of fades away and all you're seeing is this image. Almost like you can't recognize the journey to get here, but that you're just here. And it's like the new you looking back at you. Like, even now when I'm in the mirror, this is not the body I'm used to. Of course, I never realized there was anything going on with the body I had before, but now seeing this one, it's like so unfamiliar. The clothing sizes that I buy now, they're unfamiliar, you know, or just even interacting with people who haven't seen me until getting to this point. When they see the difference, then I'm like, oh yeah, I do look different, but there's still this disbelief and this disconnect from the body that I see and the person that I think I am on the inside. You know, I do realize my accomplishments, but looking at the body and putting it together with the mind, there's a disconnect that hasn't quite caught up with each other yet. But it's really, I mean, it's thrilling. Seeing the images in that photographer's camera that day, I was like, whoa. Yeah, all I can say is disbelief, unable to imagine that this is my body, putting it together with my body, like definitely felt separate. Yeah, but it's an incredible moment also. And seeing the pictures, forget it. I mean, wow. Yeah. So much pride. Yeah.
And since, how's that been? Consolidation, early investment?
Yeah, immediately after the checkpoint is when I started my separation process with my husband. We gave up on trying to have kids and then decided that we were no longer meant to be together and started that whole process. What I've kept up with is movement in terms of tennis. And what I've realized is the one thing I want in this new chapter of life is ease and flow and joy. And I needed to not be tracking things. I needed to not be following any kind of schedule and curriculum. I know that those were the things we set in place during the journey. And the first thing I wanted to do during this next phase with my husband and us separating is just let go of all of that and just have ease. So I've done well in maintaining, but in my own way without any tracking. And I don't know if that means I've consolidated and been in the investment phase. I just know that this is what's right for me right now. I still keep RNT close by. I watch what's happening on Facebook. I listen to podcasts, and I come to some of the calls, like the morning calls. What are they called? Those the virtual meets. And I want to stay connected. I think the gratitude I have towards that journey and the coaches and the program, I never want to forget that. So I want to maintain my connection to that. For me, it's not really part of my everyday right now in a way that I wanted it to be, like consolidation and the next phases, but I think I'm coming back to it. There's just so much I needed to do to take care of myself. And this is where I am. Again, realizing where I am and what I need has become way more important than pushing myself towards any other goals right now.
Maintenance is a goal itself, I always say, when you're in consolidation. So if you're maintaining, you're not going backwards, you just progress to me.
And maintenance, I always say that too. Maintenance is really an active process. It doesn't just happen. Yeah. It still requires small decisions every day. It still requires decisions day after day. And so everything that we learned, even if 80% of that is being applied now, it's still an active process.
Yeah, you're saying yes to the new Maneesha, right? You're not going back to the old ways.
Oh, so, no. I mean, that's impossible. That's impossible. You can't go all the way back. I mean, I suppose you could, because I know that there are RNT stories where people go all the way back, but
not RNT stories. That's the
not
stories.
RNT stories. Three RNT stories, I should say. Sorry.
That's why we have the
that's
journey.
That's why you started the program, totally. And that's what I mean. Yeah, of course, not people who had done art. There's no way after getting to the checkpoint, after being in the community, after having the supportive coaching, after realizing so many things about yourself, after learning so much about yourself, there's no way you can go back. Absolutely no way. I can't see that happening. So yeah, I think I'm maintaining. I don't know what phase I'm in. Yeah. And
so you made some big life changes straight after your checkpoint in this year. What gave you the sort of push to say, look, I'm taking control here, and I'm going to make some serious changes here, even if it's going to be hard? Because it's a very difficult thing to do. What you've described, especially when it's been a long time together.
It's back and forth. So the stronger my body got, I think the stronger my mind became. And it gives you that mental strength to say to yourself, if this is what you need, if it means separating from your things that are not well within you, right? If your marriage is not well, if your relationship is not well, things that are external to you, because your internal is so strong, like the physical strength giving you the mental strength, and then the inner mental strength allowing you to see what outside of you is no longer good for you. I imagine, at least for me, and I can see probably for many other people, when you become so strong internally, mentally, you can start to separate yourself from things that you've been holding on to for external strength. Not to say that we don't need community, or that we don't need partnership, or that we don't need loving romantic relationships, but not all of them are good for you. And this one was no longer good for me. And I think RNT was part of me saying enough is enough. And this is no longer a supportive environment. And it is something I need to leave before enduring more pain and hurt in this relationship. And I'd rather support me. I'd rather be compromising with me. I'd rather be negotiating with myself than putting that energy of compromise and negotiation into a relationship that isn't really serving me anymore. We just wanted different things, and I was able to see that way more clearly with the mental resolve that I had developed. And I think the mental resolve I developed was, yes, definitely a part of that physical transformation, along with, I must say, all the mindset coaching that I've had prior to RNT, while getting coached by life coaches, while becoming a life coach, and then of course getting the coaching that I was getting with RNT coaches, and meeting with the community in RNT too. I mean, all of it strengthened the mind enough to be able to say, these things are no longer okay for me, and let me step away from them, and I'll be okay. I'll be okay without that romantic relationship, without that partnership, without that companion in life. Yeah.
What do you say to people who may be in a similar situation? Because it's something that's not spoken about often, but there are a lot of people in relationships where, you know, they might mention that they're probably better off without it, but they don't pull that trigger because it's easier to stay in it. What would you say to anyone listening who might be in that position right now?
I think if you've realized you need to come out of it, but you're deciding to stay in it, one, that's a decision, right? It's not lack of choice. You're making a choice each day to be there, to stay there, and to keep yourself in this situation that may not be good for you. And that's a choice you're making. But if you're making choices every day that are not good for you, then could it be time to find a way to strengthen yourself mentally and then decide something new, or decide to stay, but more intentionally? I feel like I was deciding to stay every day from a place of weakness. Like, I'm not strong enough to leave, therefore I'll just stay. But it was a decision to stay every day. So I think realizing all of it's a choice, right? Staying is a choice that you're making actively every day. And if there's a new choice you want to make and you're just unable because you don't feel strong enough, then go and find some mental strength. Figure out a way to make yourself more strong mentally. That will give you everything you need. And if the physical is the way to get to the mental strength, then maybe that's something you try. Because getting into a physical shape, it requires pulling out all the mental stops too, you know? That's the only way you're going to get to the physical shape of your life, is to deal with the mental muck. And so you get to channel your energy into creating a physical version of yourself. But really what you're doing is getting into the best mental shape of your life that can push you towards making these decisions in a more deliberate way. Maybe that means leaving a relationship. Maybe that means separating yourself from parents who are toxic, or other friends who are toxic, you know, in-laws who are toxic, siblings who are toxic. I don't know what it means for the individual, but for me, it meant leaving the relationship that was toxic. And I love that man. He is still my soulmate. He is still the man that I will always admire and respect, but we have different dreams. And so once the dreams didn't align, I knew it wasn't the right relationship for me. As hard as it is to leave him, it's still the right thing. It doesn't have to be easy. It's not easy, but it's still something I needed to do for me. And so if you need to do something for yourself that will create a healthier, non-toxic environment for you and your mind, if you're not doing it, what's lacking? Is it the mental strength? And if you don't have the mental strength, is it the physical that's going to get you there? I think those are the questions I would ask.
That segues very nicely into me asking, how's the physical been the vehicle for you?
It's such a circular journey. Like, the more you put your mind to it, the stronger your body gets. The stronger your body gets, the more mental strength you gain. The more mental strength you gain, the more you can accomplish in your life. To do things that I've never done before, to become a professional certified life coach, to start a business to leave medicine as a career, to write a book chapter. These are the things that probably 2 years ago, you could have never said to me I would be doing these things. Leaving my first career as a doctor, transitioning to a whole new career, playing tennis competitively, going to the gym regularly, evaluating my food choices on a regular basis, opting for activity with friends rather than sitting around at a restaurant with friends, adopting a dog for the first time, like never having had a pet before. There's so many things that you don't even know you want to do. And then you get to this physical strength that gives you the mental strength to really ask yourself, what do you want? What do you really want, rather than what are you just doing every day? So you can explore more things, right? You can be more creative. You can really tap into the joy that you feel from these new activities and that flow that you really want to feel. It feels like there was a resistance in life before, and now it feels like there's a flow. Like I'm choosing everything that I'm doing on a daily basis very intentionally, rather than what I was supposed to be doing. You don't even know what you wanted to do until you start gaining the mental clarity. And then it's like, oh, I'm really good at this thing, but I haven't tapped into it.
Amazing. I read, you very kindly sent me your book that you wrote a chapter in, and there's a very powerful chapter that you penned down.
Mm-hmm.
Your journey has been transformational, as you just mentioned, and I always love it when people publish books.
Mm-hmm.
Being a writer myself, tell us more about the book, and tell us more about your chapter in the book, and what the book itself overall means, because it's a very powerful collection of stories that you and the team have put together there. Talk about the book's mission and what your role in that was.
I think the mission of the book is empowering girls, empowering women to see that even difficult beginnings can lead to a life that's worth living and beyond. All the women who have written in this book are immigrant women, not only immigrants to the US, but immigrant to other countries. So they've had their own journeys of immigration and their own battles with relationships, abuse, and so many other factors that they've all written about in a very raw and real way. And it was encouraged by the founder of the project, the Warrior Women Project, to really get raw in the writing and to write with a lot of, to be really real and to show the emotions and not to be afraid of showing the emotions in the writing. To the point where almost every story that's written, and there's 22 stories in this book, written by immigrant women, each one of them will probably make you cry. So it's a really heavy book, heavy stories. Each one of them is so different, yet there's, I think, a thread in all of them of empowerment and resiliency. And my process of writing, and it was 2,500 words we were tasked to write. I sat down, I think within like an hour, it was all written. And I think what I've said many times is, when the story is compelling itself, or enough, when the story is compelling enough, it will write itself. And so the story that I think I had in my head, now that I'm 45, it's been in there for so long, it just came out. And so there was no effort required, and there was almost no editing done to my story, because it was just real and raw, and it's a personal story.
Yeah.
You can tell a personal story if you're brave enough, I think, easily.
Just for the listeners, to give a little sneak peek of what it's about, do you want to give it a slight overview, or are you gonna? Yes,
it's about a journey towards my own unconditional self-love, and knowing that that has always been there, and I think it is always there when we begin our lives. I think it gets covered up with the layers of life that we live through, And I think there's a moment in time where I am now where I'm back to it. So I'm back in my own unconditional self-love. And that story is what I wrote about here.
Where can people get a copy of the book?
Amazon is probably the easiest. And it's Amazon UK, Amazon.com in the US. And it's called The Warrior Women Project.
Brilliant. We'll get that in the show notes for you as well, to help spread the mission out there. It's very, very powerful collection of stories. And like you said, they're all very rawly written. I was definitely surprised by that. So
very raw.
Fantastic. Yeah. Any final words for the listeners before we wrap up?
I think the heart and soul behind the RNT program is what has been most inviting. I think starting with you, Akash, starting with the coaches that I encountered, and also the people that have been through RNT who are still in the community, who encourage the rest of us along the way. It's the most beautiful thing. It's not a fitness program, it's not it's so much, it's a life transformation from the inside out. And I think every person deserves to go through the journey, because it's a beautiful connection, not only to the people who run it, but a beautiful connection to yourself in a way that is profound and will allow for you to explore parts of you that you've never explored, and to create things that you've never created, and to live into your fullest potential. From your true self. Like, I really do think that that's what RNT is. You're going to live to your fullest potential after engaging with the program, after engaging with yourself in the deepest, most meaningful way. And I felt that from the very beginning, and it never changed. It only got stronger. And the admiration I have for the team and for the program and for what you've created, it's beyond words, really, because I see the impact it has on everybody that it touches. And kudos to you for developing something like this. It comes from the heart and from the soul. I can see why it's the way it is, because I understand that you see the gaps in what's needed for the world to become a better place. And I think this is your way of giving into that and to impact the world from this place, from this journey that you've created for people. I think it's amazing. And I think everybody deserves to experience it.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that. Really appreciate it. And it means a lot. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thanks so much for sharing your story, Maneesha. It's been an absolute pleasure.